we're going to work on time management from the perspective of setting goals. We got 3 things we're going to accomplish in our discussion here this evening. First one is I want to give you the definition of time management from the Kairos management perspective so that you are able to get a context on which you can build from as you try to improve your time management. And we're going to talk about setting goals, different types of goals. You have very large goals down to very specific goals. We're going to work our way through that. And then we're going to talk about the processes behind doing that. And then many of you have taken the time management analysis. I want to spend some time walking through a sample report for you so you get an idea behind what it's about and how you can use it going forward. Again, any questions anybody has, pop in, let me know, or save them to when you think it's appropriate. All right, let's talk about the definition of time management. At Kairos, we have a very simple definition. Time management is the right planning along with the right process to control your productivity. And if what I would ask you to take from that sentence is the 3 words, planning, process, and control. Good, solid time management practices starts with planning. If you don't do the planning, you are not going to be able to probably do the rest well. So start with a solid foundation and plan. Then the next thing is process, or another word for that is really execution. How well are you going to execute against the plan that you just established? And then the third element is control, and it's your control. How well are you going to, through the planning and the process that you do, control your time to get done with what you need to get done? And the 3 of these are, in essence, interchangeable. So you might start to plan, you start to execute, and you realize, I'm not executing as well as I should, so you jump back and you do the plan. You also could be saying, I'm trying to control the events around me, but I'm not doing well because my planning and process wasn't done quite right. So you maybe need to go back and do the planning and the process. So the 3 are designed to work together to help you approach time management from a systematic way, and also a continuing improvement way. So again, the 3 words, planning, process, and control. Remember those as you begin to execute and work through your time management. In addition to the planning, process, and control, for those of you who've taken the TMA, you probably noticed these particular 5 areas. These are what we consider 5 priority categories that an individual needs to work on to have a full comprehensive time management approach. They are planning, task management, focus, organization, and personal care. Depending on which one of those categories ties back to the planning, process, and control. Some areas are heavy into planning, some are only into control. So those 5 areas work in conjunction with the definition of time management to, again, add this whole holistic approach to your time management. Then we break down in our time management approach those 5 areas into various sections. And if you go back to your time management analysis, you'll see you answered 20 scenarios and provided a response to each one of those. These items listed here in the middle are those scenarios. And so we look at each one of those tied into a particular area to help identify specific aspects and actions you can take to then improve a particular category, to then improve your overall time management. So we'll get into some aspects of this as we talk about goal setting. And you'll see common themes and elements tied back into this process of goal setting to help you understand, particularly if you have the TMA report, what areas can tie back into your way that you can improve setting goals. So what we're going to do from a goal standpoint is we are going to start big. We're going to look at the broad picture of it. It's like this is you looking down on your life from space broadly. We're slowly work our way to specifics. So we're going to start out with, what is your purpose? That's your ultimate goal. What's your purpose in life? We're going to talk about that. Bucket list. Some of you all might be saying, I don't look as old as the guy presenting right now. Why is he talking about a bucket list? Well, a bucket list is something that you really want to do. You may not know what time you want to do it. It could be years, but it's something that should be a part of your goal setting process. And then we're going to look at personal, professional goals. Long-term goals are different than like bucket lists because a long-term goal may be a year or two out, but there's more definition to it. Annual goals are usually in a year to 6 months to a year, but typically there's a lot more detail of that. We'll talk about short-term goals and then the tools that you use related back to each one of these particular goal areas. So I'm going to start with purpose first. And purpose is your ultimate goal. And it is simply, what is your purpose in life? And you might be thinking, I am trying to get to tomorrow. Why are you bugging me about what is my purpose in life? Because ultimately, this is a great time in your life to figure it out. And oh, by the way, you're allowed to change your mind. When I was in college, I was an economics major. I got a degree in economics, and I ended up getting out of college and ultimately went to work for Hallmark Cards, selling greeting cards. Never would have expected that in college, when I'm taking economics, that I would have. So my career goals shifted, my personal goals shifted as I had a family, had kids. And so your purpose in life is going to change. Just get a purpose now and be okay if it changes later. The makeup of a purpose goal is to first decide, what are my dreams? Think big. Think whatever you think is going. You might say, this is crazy, but I'm going to put it on there. Like, I want to be the winner of American Idol, and I don't, because I can't sing. But think of something. What are your dreams? And put them down on paper. Then the second thing that you want to do is, what are my core values? And what I mean by what's important to me as an individual? What are areas that I am not going to compromise on in my life, whatever those are? Put those down as well. And then what you need to see is compare your dreams to your core values and do those align. Does that dream, do I have to compromise my core values to achieve that dream? And if you don't, then that needs to be considered part of your purpose in life. Then the next thing is to talk about what needs to change in my life to meet my dreams or to meet this big goal that I've put out there for myself. Do I have to get additional education? Do I have to change my job? Do I have to move to a different place? What needs to change in my, do I have to stop doing stuff? Do I have to start doing stuff? Unpack all of that. Then after the needed change aspect, you put down your strengths. What am I good at now? And you all have strengths. If somebody's saying, I don't have any strengths, we need to talk one-on-one, because I'll unpack that for you. So everyone has strengths. And then the idea is, after you've set your dreams, your core values, your needed change, your strengths, daydream. Time management, productive daydreaming is good time management because it gets your creative juices flowing. So imagine your future. What would my future need to look like for my dream to come true without compromising my core values, knowing I am able to accomplish it because I'm going to change these things. When you go through this exercise, it's not an easy exercise, but when you go through that, you can develop a 1 or 2 sentence life purpose statement. So for example, right now, my life purpose statement is for me to be able to help every person I work with to be a talented person and to be the best husband and father, and hopefully potentially soon a grandfather. That's my life purpose statement. So it can be as simple as a professional goal tied with a personal goal. Your life purpose statement could simply be, I want to be the best brother I possibly can. I want to be the best son I possibly can. Whatever the purpose, everything else flows around that, because then you have to ask, how do I invest my time to be the best at? How do I invest the time to fulfill my purpose? So very big, very broad. I'm not asking you to start with this as you learn how to set goals, but this is the ultimate goal for you. And I think that knowing what your purpose in life helps you to get up in the morning and approach the day with a great positive motivation. All right. The second aspect is a bucket list. And if you don't know what a bucket list is, there actually was a movie on called that name. Morgan Freeman was in it. And actually a bucket list are just a list of neat, unique, and different things that you wouldn't think about doing in your everyday life, but what you want to accomplish before you die. And one of my bucket list items is I want to walk the rim to rim of the Grand Canyon. You start at the rim in one area, you walk all the way around to the other. And my youngest son said, Dad, we need to plan that for next year. So that might be a reality in 2023. I have to do a whole lot of, I have to get in much better shape, you know, because it's a tough hike. But the idea to that is that's a bucket list item of mine. I don't have a finite date on it, though it might be if my son and I work out the logistics, but it's out there, not necessarily tied with a firm plan associated with it. And so the elements to that, as you plan a bucket list item, is how important is this bucket list to you? So for me personally, hiking the Grand Canyon from rim to rim was fairly important. What made it more important is my son actually wants to do it with me. So I'm like, ooh, that's a cool moment. So now all of a sudden that's a higher level of importance to me. But what's the level of importance? So you make your list, say what's important on this list, rank it. And then once you get to the point that it's high enough for importance to you, then you start to put details around it. What does it take for me to do that? How much time am I going to have to invest to prepare that? What's the logistics? Do I have to save money to travel there? All of the details you build around that. And it may change your importance or priority level, because you might say, hey, listen, I can't afford to do this at this point. It's going to take too much stuff. I need to plan this further out. And maybe I include a process of savings to be able to do that particular bucket list item. But once you feel you've got the importance and the details around it, then you pick a start date and confirm again the resources that you need to be ready for that start date with an estimated end date. Because some of these bucket list items, like you might say, I want to visit every 50 state. My bucket list item for me is to see all 50 states in the United States. Well, you're not going to do that. Maybe you will, if you're lucky enough. Maybe you'll do that in one shot. But most cases you won't. It's going to be a series of various trips you take to ultimately meet that goal. So it might be 5-10 years out in the future. So a bucket list item for you could be, I want to be president of I want to own my own company, or I want to be the next Elon Musk. So if you're going to do that, then that could take you a long time to do that. So again, bucket list items can be personal or professional, but it starts with how important is this to me? And then from there, decide the strategy to make it happen. All right, so we've gone from a high level of your purpose statement in life to bucket list items that are long-term, kind of really neat things that you would like to make happen in your life, to then a more tactical, more a little bit down to earth is setting personal goals. And personal goals are, for example, I might turn a bucket list item into a personal goal in that I want to hike the Grand Canyon from rim to rim in 2023. That becomes a personal goal. So in that case, or I want to visit all of my college friends in the cities that they live in by graduation time. So if you do that, then that's a personal goal. You have to set things around that. And we'll talk about the details of that. So that for you is a personal goal. A professional goal, I may sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, is also a personal goal, but on the professional side of your life. So for example, you say in 2 years, I want to be a manager where I work. Okay, you still have all the duties and responsibilities of your current role or assignment. And then you have to figure out what are the extra things that I need to do to be able to become a manager. And that usually there's an investment of your time and an investment of setting up a series of goals to be able to reach that particular aspect. It's going to probably involve your manager or others with the employer that you work with. It may require additional education for you to do. An investment of your time is going to happen. So that's a personal aspect of your life, but it's a professional goal. So both of these two, both personal and professional goals, can be wrapped up together. So that aspect, and again, the personal and the professional, that's how I talked about that aspect between the two, the dynamic of their personal goals broken into the personal side of the business, what you are doing, you want to do personally, and then what you want to do related to your career. These can be long or short-term goals. You know, the other thing you might say is, hey, I want to be employee of the month. That could be a short-term goal. That's very intensive that you have to do things with. But that's a professional goal that you personally want to do. A pure professional goal, to kind of outline that, is your boss comes to you and says, if you're in sales, I come from a sales background, and they say you have to sell, you have to have 5 new customers that you bring on this month. That is a straight, pure professional goal. It's a goal you need to accomplish, a goal you need to plan for, a goal you need to time allocate for. But that's purely a professional goal. It's when you add in the fact that I'm going to not do 5, I'm going to do 10 new customers so I can prove to my boss I'm a go-getter. That blends professional and personal goal together because you've added in an additional incentive for yourself to make something happen. So this dichotomy, this difference between personal and professional goals. So now let's talk about just isolating whether it's personal or professional. What is a long-term goal? And this is where you kind of try to wrap things around. And it's different than a purpose statement. It's even different than a bucket list, because a bucket list item could turn into a long-term goal. There are varieties of questions and things you need to consider around.
All right. I think Dave is having some sound issues. Let me try to get him back on. Let me pause the recording.
And then you've got your personal and professional. You have to decide which one of those. Again, you'll put details around that. How long is the goal going to take you? Is it going to take you a year, 2 months, a day? You've got to define what the time is there. Then I'm going to do something. I'm going to step away because my door is open and I have pets and they will come in. So hang on just
Oh,
a second.
they sure will.
Tried to fix my internet, had to leave. So, all right. So then you have the length of the time, and then ultimately you have to say, what's the why and the how? So of that goal, why am I doing that goal? And how am I going to do that goal? And quite frankly, if you can't answer the why question, stop. There's no sense trying to establish a goal on something that you don't know why you're doing. And this happens a lot in business. And I've learned over time to ask why. So why are we meeting every Tuesday at 9 o'clock? Because it really don't seem like we're getting anything done. So the why and the how, and then how are you going to measure that goal? So what does it mean to success? So if I measure that, does that mean if I reach a certain threshold of productivity, or let's say I've got a goal to have a 4.0 GPA, that's your measurement then. So what are you going to do to get there for that semester? Then you have to say, what tools do I need to be able to successfully achieve that goal? And that's very broad. Tools can be, sometimes you have to ask if it's tied to where you work, hey, I might need some additional training on how to do Excel. So I understand that tool. So you have to say, what are the tools I have to be successful? And then how am I going to track this? Because one of the things that businesses do, and I've been guilty of this in my career, but big, large businesses, is they develop a goal and a plan and they sit it on a shelf. And then a year later, figuratively on a shelf, and a year later, someone pulls it off the shelf, blows the dust off and looks at it and says, we didn't make the goal. So what you want to do is you want to be able to make sure that you're measuring and tracking that goal over the course of the life of the goal. So then ultimately you can say to yourself, how did I do? I was close to my goal. I made my goal. I exceeded my goal. So those are the long-term things for long-term planning. That's what you need to consider when you set and establish a goal. Usually, again, for something 2 years or more out. Now we get to what's called annual planning. And for those of you who have started your business career or early on in it, your company has an annual plan. Some way, whether it's a financial plan, an annual goal of production, an annual goal of whatever, they're going to have some type of planning. You should too, of both personal and professional goals. So a challenge is you can even start thinking, I can't believe we're in September already of 2022, but you really want to start thinking about your 2023 goals kind of quickly so that you're not waking up Christmas Day going, what am I going to do 2023? So annual planning is this idea of setting goals longer term out takes time. So annual planning, it's the same steps as long-term planning. You go through personal, professional, details, length. You ask the how, the why, the how, the measure, the tools, track, how you're going to do. It's the same thing, just a smaller period of time. And probably a little bit more specific. An annual goal may take you a year to complete. But if you say in 2023, I want to make sure I graduate, and graduation is the spring term, that goal is only going to be potentially 4, 5, 6 months, depending on when you graduate. So while an annual plan and an annual goal may be for the next year, it may or may not be for the full year. You're just planning it as part of your annual strategy. All right, so then you move to short-term goals. And this is probably where I'm going to ask you, as you try to understand and get engaged in goal planning, start here, because they're easier for you. If it's easier to get a hold of, it's easier to get comfortable if you're going to set goal plannings. And guess what? Kind of looks similar to annual planning and long-term planning. The difference is, on the short-term side to start out with, is you need to have specific details around that short-term goal. And that's typically why it's shorter. So there's specifics around that. So you need to understand your details there. You need to give yourself a hard start date and a hard stop date. And what I mean by that is, be firm. I'm going to start this on 9/15, and I'm going to be done with it by September 30th. That impacts your short-term time management. Then understand the time it's going to take. So if you give yourself 2 weeks to do that, how many hours is it going to take for you to get that goal done? If you say, hey, it's going to take me 40 hours to get that short-term goal done, I'm going to tell you, you need to reevaluate your time frame, because you're going to have to allocate a ton of your time to be able to achieve that short-term goal. So understand the time. Then you have to allocate the time in that time frame. So you have to think forward. So let's use that 2-week scenario again. I'm going to start on 9/15 and do it at the end of the month. You need to allocate time on your calendar for that 2 weeks out there to devote specific time at specific times of the day for you to be able to feel comfortable meeting that and achieving that. And then you got to commit, and you got to commit all in. You have to hold yourself accountable to say, I'm going to achieve that short-term goal. And then you have to be disciplined. You have to, if you're going to plan 3 hours a day on Tuesdays and Thursdays for the next 2 weeks, by golly, you need to do that. You need to meet and be disciplined to plan and spend that time to meet that goal. And then, like the other ones, you need to track, so that way you can say, a week in, I should be about 50% done with the goal. Week and a half in, about 75%. Something that allows you to measure your progress, to be able to understand if you're going to be able to make that goal. And again, if you're not going to make that goal, let's say you're a week and a half into it, and you're like, gosh, I'm not going to be able to make this goal, then stop there, go back up to the top, evaluate your details, define a new hard stop date if you have to, reallocate time, recommit yourself, and try to be disciplined through that process. So this is my recommendation for you to be able to setting these goals to do that. So let's talk about some of the tools. And one of the things I try to do when I coach people is to say, what existing tools do you have without having to tell you to go out and learn something new? And you do have an existing tool that is at your fingertips right now, and that's a calendar. And then put it up here. But one of the things that you as a group, so the time management assessment tools that I've rolled up an average, and I've sent a report to Camilla and Dimaj about the average, and almost, I think I want to say 82% of you consistently use a calendar. So good for you, because that's a foundational tool for time management. What I want to do is pull over. So what I put up here, this is a fictitious calendar. And when I work with people a lot, what I get is, I say, show me your calendar. And the calendar inevitably looks something like this. It's populated with times on the calendar that are either hard meetings that you've set for yourself or others have set for you. And then in between those are usually large periods of open time. And I'm like, well, what are you doing during that open time? Well, at that point, I kind of go look at my tasks and see what I've got to do, and I'll figure out, work on this project. And there's no structure behind it. Ideally, what I'd love for you to have, and prepare yourself because you're going to get visually stimulated here. This is what I would like your calendar to look like. And you're probably going, what is going on there with that spaghetti mess? So the idea behind a goal planning time management calendar is you plan every hour of every day and you color code it. So in this case, the green areas are actually, that's your time. It's your personal time that you are allocating to do stuff. And then the other codes could represent other things. But again, if you look at this calendar, this is filled with just stuff that you have committed to firmly. This is a time management program of which you intersperse your goals into that. So when I talked about the discipline and allocating time, you do it on your calendar because that helps hold you accountable for the time you're going to invest in those goals. So there's a lot behind this, I know, but really get used to, and if you don't use an electronic calendar and use a paper planner, do the same thing, fill every hour up on your planner. It's going to change. I know that, but at least you've got a process in place to help you reach your goals and to help hold yourself accountable. So using a calendar is the foundational aspect to it. The other avenue around that is lists. Now, what I really mean by list is also tasks. And by the way, I'm showing a Google Calendar here because most of you who've taken the TMA, the majority of those, actually you had Gmail addresses. So you already have access to this type of calendar. This type of logic works with the Microsoft calendar. If you have Apple and Apple's version of their calendar, it also works. But the idea behind the lists is to set them up off to the side. And they get populated up top here. Again, Microsoft and Apple have the options to do those lists or those tasks. And so those tasks, so let's say task number 4 has actually 3 subtasks. So if your goal over the next 2 weeks is to complete this particular assignment, there might be 3 tasks associated with that assignment. I have to research, I have to write the paper, then I have to proof it. Those 3 tasks make up that higher level task. So in this case, the goal, you may need to break the goal up into other areas. But again, by having it on a calendar, you've got those areas allocated as to-dos for you. Now, side note on task and task planning and management. Not all tasks are equal. Common mistake is people will line up 10 tasks in a day, for example. They get done with 8, and then they don't feel good at the end of the day because they did the 8 easy ones instead of the 2 difficult ones. Prioritize the tasks in the level of importance for what you need to get done. So if those 2 important tasks were really non-negotiable and they needed to get done, and those are the only 2 things you got done, you can still feel really good about yourself because then it's going to be easier to plan the other 8. So short-term lists or short-term goal planning, the list or task component is really important. So then you're working on your goal. Go back to the 2-week example again. And you say, I started on the 15th. Well, the 15th, a whole bunch of stuff happens. And you wake up on the 16th and go, I'm going to start again. And the 16th goes away and the 17th comes, you said, well, I got a lot of other stuff today. I still have a week and a half to get it done. You have lost focus. And one of the challenges on general time management overall, as well as goal setting, is people lose focus or lose sight of the goal. And that happens in these 6 areas. They procrastinate. They lack of the motivation. They don't say no to other things to get them back tied to the goal. They get distracted. They allow interruptions and they talk too much. Gap. Each one of these takes away the essence of what you need to do to complete that goal. So if you're procrastinating, maybe you need to break the goal into 2 separate smaller goals or more. So you feel good about completing each element or segment of that goal, and you don't get procrastinated because it's so big and you're like, where do I start? Motivation is also a key. If you are not positively motivated to begin that goal, think twice about the nature of the goal, the timing of the goal, and what you need to change to feel motivated to do it. Because if you're apprehensive, I'm going to tell you you're not going to do the goal. So you want to be enthused and motivated to do it. Saying no is about to you and to others. As others come and say, hey, Dave, can you help me with this? Hey, Dave, can you do this? You need to be able to say no, but in a nice way. I call it the no, but. No, I can't do that right now, but I am free in a couple hours after I get done with this project that I'm working on. Or how about this alternative? Can we do this? And so the saying no part ties really well with interruptions because people are going to come interrupt you. So if it's important for you to be working on something, get yourself in a way that you're not going to be interrupted. And if you work in an office environment or you work at your job, that you may need to negotiate that with your boss to say, hey, listen, remember you were asking me to do this thing? I need to get that done by Friday. So can I go either work remote from home tomorrow so I can do that? Or can I go to the quiet part of the office where people aren't going to bug me? You try to negotiate that. I'm going to jump back up to distractions because distractions are on you. That's where if you allow yourself to get distracted by things in the environment around you, and for me, the phone is the ultimate distraction. Distractions for me are my biggest time management challenge. I'm horrible at it because I'm a squirrel. Something pops up and I'm like, ooh, what's this? And so it's very diligent for me. I have to really pay attention to being that. And then talking too much. I don't have everything I need today. So I think I'm probably going to wait. There just comes a time when you just have to shut up and start doing it. And so that is the aspect of talking too much. So as you work your goals, doesn't matter whether it's your life purpose statement on down to a short-term goal, when you're working it, you need to stay focused. So I've walked us through goals from high-level goals to really short-term goals. All of it tie back to the aspects of time management in the 5 priority categories. So as you establish a goal and you have your time management assessment in front of you, you can reference to say, well, what are the areas that I need to be able to accomplish that goal? Do I have to plan ahead? Do I need to prioritize? Have I got it on my calendar? Do I need to make sure that I sleep enough at night to be able the next day to be refreshed? All of that needs to be weaved in to your ultimate goal of accomplishing what you set for yourself. So again, as a reminder, as you work goals or anything in your time management, remember planning, process, and control. How am I going to plan to achieve that goal? What's the plan I've set up? How am I going to execute that, or what's the process? And how am I going to control either me or other events around me to ensure I meet that goal? All right, I'm going to stop and I'm going to stop.